Hello, I'm Joe from Carême cooking classes, and today we're making pasta. We're going to make it the old-fashioned way in the pile on the bench, and then we're going to roll it out into a sheet and cut it into fettuccine. So not too tricky. Let's do it. All right, so as I say, we're doing a pile on the bench. We're going to have a pile of flour. We're using the Italian 00 flour. We want 220 grams. Pile on the bench. Should be about that. That's 209. 219, that's pretty accurate. There we go. And we want a hole in this. I put in a little oil, don't need a lot, and 2 eggs, and I put a little salt. Not all recipes have salt, interestingly, but mine does. Oops, oh dear, the eggs are making a break for it. And I haven't put the salt in, have I? No, put the salt in. So that's what, half a teaspoon of salt. And then we want to mix up the eggs and salt in their pile, and then start mixing in the flour. Recipes say to keep a bit of the flour separate in case you don't need it, but I find I always do. This recipe just works. But I have been making this a few times lately, and so I've been making it under the same circumstances. So, you know, there's not been a lot of variance in humidity and stuff. I try and keep one hand cleaner than the other, because one hand gets quite messy. We're looking to start sort of kneading it when we can. There we go. Sort of here. It does get messy in a satisfying way, in that Play-Doh way. There we go. Oh, and it went all over my hands. And then the object is to knead in all the flour and to knead the dough. And this is supposed to take a few minutes, and you want to be, use your straw, you want to be firm but gentle. And you want to get all the dough off your hands too. The object is to end up with a clean bench too. Well, the object is always to end up with a clean bench, but by cleaning it with the dough. So you just keep going. And you should end up with a satisfyingly springy dough, reasonably clean hands, reasonably clean bench. You need a bit of force in it. Bring it all together. There is quite a lot of variation in the recipes. Some recipes have some eggs and some egg yolks. Some recipes have egg yolk water, and so on and so forth. And as I say, some don't have salt and some don't have oil. Mine does. There we go, nearly there. But it does need to be fairly well kneaded. And after it's been kneaded, it needs to sit around for a while, quite a long time, and relax the gluten and hydrate the flour. Usual story when you're working with flour. You need to sit it around for a while. Getting there. So that doesn't take that long. It's not really hard. You don't want to be too rough with it, but you don't want to be too gentle either. That is getting there. Yeah. If you have it too firm, as I found out the first time I did it this way, it will be absolute murder to roll out. But if you have it too soft, if you have it too firm, it will be murder to roll out because it will be too springy. But if you have it too soft, it will be absolute murder to roll out because it will be too sticky. If it's too sticky, you can just put a bit of flour on it, and although that's cheating, that's perfectly acceptable. Whereas if it's too springy and you're trying to roll it out, it doesn't go well, shall we say. that's really there, isn't it? You'd have to say. It really should be like smooth as a baby's bottom, as they say. And that is pretty smooth. Of course, kneading is very satisfying. What my kneading action is to sort of fold it towards me and then push it away. Fold it and push it away. But always try and use your weight, so rather than too much pushing, because it's easier on your arms and wrists. Springy, smooth. You can definitely not feel any lumps in it. Yep, he's good. All right, if I sit him there and put a ball on him, it'll keep any moisture in, and he sits around, the flour hydrates, the gluten relaxes. I would leave it at least 30 minutes, and really for this one I leave it an hour while you do something else, and then you come back and roll it out. Yeah. Okay, so the pasta sat around. Here we go. He's fairly soft. We're going to need a little flour to roll it out. So here it is, a little flour. A little flour top and bottom. Now I've got this enormous pasta roller, which does make things easier. And I'm just going to roll it like that. Like you're rolling pastry. Difference between this and rolling pastry is that this is a lot tougher, because you've developed the gluten. So it takes more rolling. This is obviously a piece of dowel. I got the thickest piece of dowel I could, and I got Stephen to cut it down. And you see, every time we roll it, it springs back. But we are not alarmed, we just keep going. And my bench rattles. We just keep going. I do turn it over. And keep rolling. This is going to take a little while, a little bit of rolling. If I'd had a pasta machine at home, I would have used that, but this is more fun. The first time I ever made pasta, I did it like this, so I knew I could do it. Actually, the first time I ever made pasta, I just used a normal rolling pin. We did it in our training. We're going to cut it too, which is also not tricky. You can see it gets quite big, but then it shrinks back again. And it does slightly stick. We're not so worried about that as we are with pastry, because this is a much more resilient dough. We are slightly worried about it drying out, because if it dries out, then of course you can't roll it out anymore. See how much it shrinks back every time. But it's bigger than when we started, way bigger. I've done this a couple of times lately, and a trick I have found is that after a while you get sick of it. And so you roll it out to the biggest bit you can get, and you leave it there stuck to the bench, and it will stay that shape. It will not shrink back, because you do need to leave it to dry up a little bit before you cook it. And also you never remember to put a pot on. Now I've got a wrinkle. Sometimes you can get the wrinkle out, sometimes you just work over it. I don't think I'm going to get that one out. Well, there you go. It's got a wrinkle in it. It's homemade. think that's enormous, but then as soon as you lift it off again, it goes straight back to the same size it was before, just about. It's getting there though, isn't it? The thing about this rolling pin, of course, is where to store it. I expect to store this hanging because it's so big it won't fit into any drawer. It's going to need a tiny bit of flour if I'm going to give it another go. Or it really will stick too much. Yeah, getting there. See how much smaller it is. Dear oh dear. And see how much bigger we can get it. Each time is bigger. Just doesn't seem like it. Marvellous rolling pin. Okay, that is as big as he's going to go. He's as big as I ever get him, as I ever get it. So I normally leave that stuck to the bench like that to rest. It's quite thin. I can see bench through it, and so that it doesn't shrink back too much. Let it relax, and then I'll show you cutting in a minute. Okay, I left him for, what was that, 5 minutes, and I'd had a look here, and he's been stuck to the bench, but when I lift it off, it doesn't shrink, hurrah. It dried out a bit on the top, so I'm worried about it sticking to the bench too much, so I'm going to get it off now. See how he comes off. Good, he comes off well. Good, I was getting a bit worried there. Yep. The top has developed a dry bit. Ideally, we would let it dry a bit hung up. I normally hang it at work. I hang it. I have something, say similar to that. Put a weight over it and hang it over here. And you're supposed to let it dry so that it gets a bit sort of leathery. But this feels leathery, a bit leathery on top. Less leathery on the bottom because of course it was the bit which was stuck to the bench. Now to cut it, I want to fold it up. I'm going to have to flour it a tiny bit because this bit is a bit damp. Just a little bit of flour so it doesn't stick. Because if it sticks, you're absolutely dead. There is it. Pack up and go home. Fold it up. Cut it into fettuccine. You can cut it into whatever size you want, but I want fettuccine sizes. Cut it, fold it again. It'll be faster. Mass production, it's the way of the future. You can cut it, as I say, into whatever size you want, but this is roughly fettuccine-ish, isn't it? Once they're done, they are going to take a little bit of getting apart. Ideally, you can do them all together, but you know they are going to take a little bit of doing. That's why the machine does a better, you know, the pasta machine does a better job. It's faster. But this is the homemade one still, and so on and so forth. I'm sure you can imagine the rest. When they're done, you can keep them like this for a bit. If you want to keep them like this, tumble them into a pile and keep them moving once in a while, like that. Or put some like semolina flour or fine cornmeal in with them so that they don't stick. Because if they stick, that's it. As I say, pack up and go home. And then I've got a pot on. I remember to put a pot on to cook them in, and have everything ready, bowls warmed, all that, because they really won't take long to cook. Once they come back to the boil, they're pretty much done. Maybe 30 seconds for a fresh pasta like this. Yeah, you see, they're a bit sticky. So this is going to take me a little while, so I'll do this off camera, and I'll boil it up. I've got some sauce to go with it. Sauces are ready, and fascinating. It's fascinating. I'll do that when you're not looking. You don't need to see it. As I say, keep it moving. You can do this ahead of time if, like, you've got guests, but once in a while, just keep it moving, because if it sticks, you will have to stretch it to get it apart again, and that's not what you want. You want to keep it as it is. So there you go. Yum yum. The pasta and sauce are both ready. This is the fettuccine and the butter and sage sauce. Well, it's a bit much, isn't it? And we definitely want some of the sage leaves on top, because they look so nice. There's some through it, but you want some on top as well. Ooh, there's another one there. And this is the tomato sauce. They're both good, and they're both good. Well, they both must have Parmesan cheese on top. Oops. So, well, it's going to take me a minute to do that. I might do that after, when we actually come to eat, because I'm going to eat both of them. No, I'm going to give one to Stephen. There we go. Now, if you've been following the pasta video, check the sauce video, and if you've been following the sauce video, check the pasta video, because they're both really easy. Lovely. Thanks for watching. See you soon.